Yo, welcome back everybody to a brand new video here on the second channel. Today we're looking at the top 10 best decks post LAIC. LAIC did shake up the format quite a bit, and it really did shift the power rankings of some decks. Some decks completely falling off, some decks rising up pretty substantially, and we're going to look at what the meta looks like post LAIC right now, and in my opinion, what could be the 10 best decks in our format. This list could be inaccurate or it could be accurate. We actually do have another regionals this weekend over in Europe that will also probably dictate where the meta is going. We actually could be in a format where the meta kind of just keeps shifting back and forth. Maybe we see cards and decks kind of rise in popularity over time, and that definitely could be an indicator of where our meta could be going for sure. But let's get into what I think are the top 10 best decks post LAIC. This could be an important list to maybe consider if you are somebody who is going to this tournament over in Europe. And if you are new here to the second channel, make sure to subscribe down below. We are on the road to 10,000 subscribers, and leave a like you're going to enjoy. And let's take a look at what could be the best decks right now in our format, post-LAIC. All right, and coming in at number 10 is Rapid Strike. Now, in all honesty, I struggled with this number 10 spot. I didn't really know what to put at the number 10 spot because I think we have a good idea of what 9 other decks are in the format right now that are pretty good. I think we have a decent understanding of the 9 other decks in the meta right now. But I really did struggle to find out what the 10th best deck could be. I actually don't know. It was maybe a tie between Rapid Strike or Lugia. Those are the only 2 decks I considered putting here at the number 10. The big one, of course, that is missing from this list is Roaring Moon. Roaring Moon fell off pretty hard in our format because it did flop pretty hard at LAIC. Now, that could be a sign as to whether or not the deck is actually good or not, but Roaring Moon definitely is not the best deck right now, and it's definitely not in the top 10. So I didn't want to put Roaring Moon at number 10 when it flopped at LAIC, and I think the most logical solution for that was just probably Rapid Strike or Lugia. Rapid Strike did perform better than Lugia at LAIC. It actually did bubble out of top 8, I think. And Rapid Strike actually is still doing pretty good in the online tourneys right now, too. So I thought it was probably going to be the best pick for the number 10 spot. With the popularity of Gardevoir and even Maridon, Rapid Strike does seem pretty decent. It's really only struggles were probably going to be decks like maybe Roaring Moon and Mew. And Mew is obviously still in the meta right now, and it's still decent. But I definitely think Rapid Strike is still in a good spot. And I think this was like the logical number 10 spot. Because, again, I think the number 10 spot was kind of hard to decide on. Again, it was either Lugia or Rapid Strike. And I think Rapid Strike is just probably better than Lugia right now. Maybe Lugia would be like the de facto number 11 spot on this list. But I did want to put Rapid Strike on here. It's doing good in the online tourneys. I think it was like 3 of the top 4 in an online tourney that just happened. In like a late night tourney that just happened. So the deck's probably good right now. So I definitely think it's probably the best pick for number 10 right now overall. I didn't want to have like 2 of the same deck at number 10. Like I thought about maybe including like, okay, what if we put like 2 different versions of Lost Box on this list, but it's like, that doesn't, I don't like to think counts as much, right? So overall, Rapid Strike's probably the best pick for the number 10 spot on this list. All right, at number 9, we got Lost Zone Box. Now, I know I said Roaring Moon did flop at LAIC, and it's probably not a very good deck, but that's mostly the actual pure Roaring Moon deck. This is just a Lost Zone Radiant Charizard deck that just happens to play the Roaring Moon. Now, this deck, of course, did get top 8 at LAIC, and there were other Lost Zone decks in LAIC Day 2. I mean, we did see a couple Turbo Lost Zone decks in Day 2, so Lost Zone is still kind of holding on. I do think that Lost Zone would be maybe a little higher on this list had Maridon not won LAIC. I think that's the big issue is because Maridon Iron Hands won LAIC and Maridon is going to shoot up in popularity now, I really do think, and especially also there's another anti-Lost Zone deck, Iron Valiant Ente, I really do think that Lost Zone Box, well, it did get top 8. I think it's probably not as great right now as you might think. That's why it's at number 9 on this list, because Lost Zone Box has to compete with the popularity of Iron Hands and also the Iron Valiant decks now that are going to be a lot more popular post-LAIC. So I don't think that the Lost Zone decks are actually in the best spot right now. Well, specifically the Turbo versions that don't play Gutina are in the greatest spot right now. Though they are still considered, in my opinion, as a good deck right now in the format regardless. I mean, it did get top 8. Well, I think that if, you know, Iron Valiant and Maridon hadn't done so well, this maybe would have been a little higher on the list. I just think that due to the popularity of those anti-single prize decks doing good right now, I really do think that Lost Zone Box maybe takes a bit of a hit. The Radiant Charizard build still seems to be optimal over the Dragonite builds that people have still been trying to make work right now, mainly because Charizard is a good one-prize attacker that does help offset the trade-off that you get with these decks like Iron Hands, whereas Dragonite, you're forced into a 2-prize race, basically, by going Dragonite, whereas with Charizard, you're not. The Roaring Moon definitely is a really cool tech card, and I think it does help in a lot of other matchups, too, so I am a big fan of this list. I do want to maybe give it a try myself, actually, because I am actually a big fan of the idea of Roaring Moon and Lost Box. I think it's actually pretty cool, and maybe underexplored a little bit, maybe. But yeah, I think Turbo Lost Zone decks right now, or just the Lost Zone baby decks are in an okay spot right now. You could maybe, squeeze the Dragonite Raikou build in the number 9 spot too if you want, kind of bunch them together. I do think the Radiant Zard build is still the better way to play it though, in all honesty, and maybe the Dragonite build would be like number 12 or 13 on the top 10 or something like that. All right, and number 8 on this list is Snorlax. Now, Snorlax did get top 8 at LEIC, and I didn't expect that to happen. I thought Snorlax was going to be played, and I was like, oh, there's definitely going to be Snorlax in day 2, but to get top 8 at LEIC was kind of crazy for me to see. And I think Snorlax is still holding on in the format. I'm still going to put it on the lower end of the ranking, not because it's a bad deck. I think Snorlax is still good right now, but overall, I just think it's not popular enough, or maybe even with the popularity of some of these other decks like Entei, Valiant, good enough to really put any higher. But I do think that Snorlax stall is still a decent archetype right now. I mean, it doesn't really gain or lose any bad matchups per se with the new, format post LEIC. So I think Snorlax stall is in a fine spot. It's just not a popular enough deck to really warrant it to put any higher. Like, this could maybe theoretically be like a top 5 deck in all honesty, but I don't think I would consider putting it in the top 5. Like, I think number 8's a fine spot for Snorlax stall. It's a deck that you probably don't need to respect that much because I don't think it's as popular as people might think, and you're probably not going to hit it a lot of the time, but there are going to be the Snorlax players that do well in tournaments, and that's why it did obviously squeak its way into top 8. There were actually a few Snorlax decks in day 2 that did pretty well, not just in the top 8. Even in like the top 32, there was a couple Snorlax. So definitely, the deck is still out there and is still going to exist, but it's just not going to be super popular, though it is still a very strong deck in my opinion, and still warrants itself as one of the best decks in our format currently. All right, next up we got Mew VMAX. Now, Mew VMAX actually does get a little better post-LEIC. Now, it actually had a decent showing at LEIC. There were quite a few Mews that did well. There are actually 3 different Mew variants that saw success at LEIC. Of course, we saw the double turbo build of Mew rise in popularity. We saw the fusion build do good, and we even saw a Selgor version of Mew do pretty good at LEIC. So, Mew definitely had its fair showing at LEIC with a lot of different versions of it running around. The thing that makes Mew good right now, in my opinion, is it actually probably gets better with both Maridon and Iron Valiant getting a lot stronger. I think Mew has great matchups into both of those 2 decks specifically, and that's really good for Mew. I think Mew's a great deck, and with Roaring Moon probably nowhere to be seen right now, with the deck falling off really hard, that's really good for Mew VMAX. The fact that Roaring Moon has fallen off is a good sign for the Mew VMAX decks, and also, the thing that you really just you hold back is maybe just Charizard, and that's about it. And I think maybe Gardevoir, to a degree, could be a little tricky for Mew still, but Mew is definitely still a strong deck. It's one of the better Judge Path decks in the format right now. I think the deck is in a good spot post-LEIC. It actually might be better positioned after LEIC than it was going into LEIC, and it was pretty good in LEIC in my opinion. I thought it was still well positioned for LEIC, but now post LEIC, I think it's even better positioned in the format. There's a world where I maybe wanted to put it a little higher on the list, like maybe number 6, but I think number 7 is fair for now. People aren't really respecting the deck at the moment. Nobody's playing Drapion. Spiritomb is like non-existent right now either in a lot of decks, and I think that it gains 2 pretty good matchups with the rise of Maridon and Iron Valiant Entei. So definitely keep your eye out on Mew right now. I think Mew's still going to be a great pick post LEIC, and I think it's going to have some pretty good results this coming weekend over in our next regionals, because I think the deck is really well positioned right now post LEIC. Next up is Shampow. Now, Shampow is actually still in an okay spot right now. It didn't really do the best at LEIC that we all had hoped it would have done. You know, it didn't get top 8. It did get outside of the top 8 in the top 16. And the deck is still very strong right now regardless, though it might not have the best matchup spread with Maridon and Iron Valiant getting a little bit more popular now. That definitely can hold the deck back, and that is why it's all the way down here at number 6. So the deck is still fairly strong, and there's still going to be people that will play it regardless of whether or not it gets good or bad matchups right now going forward. But Shampow is still just a fine deck, and I mean, when the deck sets up and when it does its thing, it can be very difficult to beat. I mean, again, being able to have the snipes with the Greninja, the extra prizes with Iron Hands, and the ability to KO anything with Shampow is pretty good. And there are still decent matchups floating around right now, like Charizard is still pretty popular right now that I think Shampow is obviously pretty favored against. So there are still good matchups right now for Shampow, but Shampow does take a little bit of a hit with Maridon being a bit more popular. As Maridon does tend to have a good Shampow matchup, and then obviously the Iron Valiant deck can be a little tricky too, because your Frigibaxes can get sniped off very easily by Iron Valiant. We did see that on stream 2, where the Iron Valiant deck was able to KO those Frigibaxes really easily before they even got a chance to evolve. So the Shampow definitely is a bit shaky right now, but it's not the worst deck still, and it's still a pretty solid deck right now in our format. And at number 5 is Charizard. Charizard's still holding on pretty strong in our meta right now, and it turns out that the Pidgeot version of Charizard is the best way to play the deck right now. Pidgeot definitely does provide a lot more power to Charizard compared to Bibarel. Now, the TM Evo Bibarel build isn't terrible or anything right now. I think it's still in an okay spot. But I think overall, the Pidgeot build right now is just the better way to play the deck. Pidgeot is just a stronger card than Bibarel, and Charizard is still great. I actually think that it's still fine right now, post-LEIC. Obviously, Iron Valiant can maybe be tricky if they're able to snipe off your Charmanders and Pidgeys early on. But I do think that if you set up against Iron Valiant, it can actually be pretty tough for them to deal with Charizards, because Charizard can do so much damage, and it can easily KO the Entei. And I think your Maridon matchup's also decent, as long as you don't get path cheese pretty hard. I think if you just set up against Maridon, you probably just win a lot of the time. I mean, they're only playing the one Raichu, and Maridon really struggles to deal with multiple Charizards at once. If you can get like 2 Charizards and play against Maridon, a lot of the time it's like checkmate against them. It's really tough for Maridon to deal with Charizard, and I think that Charizard's still in a fantastic spot right now. Maybe if we're going to see a lot more Mew going forward, that can be a good thing for Charizard, and we'll have to see where Charizard ends up going post-LEIC, but I think the deck is still solid. I think it's a great middle point right now in the top 10 ranking at the number 5 spot. I think the Pidgeot build definitely is the better way over the Team Evo build, though I'm not saying the Team Evo build is bad. I just think that it's not as good as the Pidgeot build, but definitely keep your eye on Charizard going forward, because the deck is still really good, and maybe is kind of not the underdog of the format, but the deck that people maybe don't consider as much right now going forward. So definitely keep your eye on Charizard. And at the number 4 spot is Lost Zone Giratina. Now, this deck definitely seems to be kind of a polarizing deck right now. A lot of people either love this deck, or a lot of people either hate this deck. It did do good at LEIC. It got, top 4 at LEIC. The deck has legs right now, and the deck does seem to be the strongest way to play the Lost Zone engine due to Giratina's power compared to, those smaller Cramorant Sableye builds that we're seeing. And Giratina definitely is very scary still in our format, especially when Charizard is still very powerful. And I think Lost Zone Giratina still boasts a good matchup spread in the format. I actually think its matchups against Valiant and Maridon aren't that bad. The Maridon matchup maybe is a little shaky, but I think that the Valiant matchup's not too bad, mainly because Giratina can be tough to deal with, and I think that Giratina could be pretty strong right now, post-LEIC. I mean, Path to Peak is a very strong card in the format, and Giratina is one of the best decks that gets to abuse Path to the Peak. And yeah, Giratina still seems very strong. It does, again, seem like a polarizing deck where people either love it or they hate it. Me, personally, I'm not a big fan of playing Giratina myself. I don't really like the deck that much, but I think the deck is very strong, and it's definitely the deck that does seem to have the most, little tweaks you can make to it. Like, maybe you can start adding in a Spiritomb in the deck if you're more scared of Mew. You can add in Ionos. You can play more Boss, more stuff like that. This is a build that did get top 4 at LEIC. It does play a Forest Seal Stone, which does seem like a weird card to play in Lost Zone Giratina. But overall, the deck does seem very strong right now in our meta. And I think going forward, post-LEIC, the deck's still in a fine spot. I think that it's still pretty solid and is still a respectable deck that will still be fairly popular right now. So definitely Lostina can still be a force to reckon with in our format, assuming it doesn't get those, clunky Giratina draws that everyone talks about. All right, the big spot here, number 3, we got Entei Iron Valiant. Now, this deck completely caught everyone off guard by almost taking down LEIC. Now, Iron Valiant Entei seems to be a great deck. I think that it was very underestimated, very underappreciated going into LEIC, and then all of a sudden, the deck nearly took down the entire tournament. I think the previous top 10 video I did where I, before LEIC, looking at the top 10 decks, I think I would have put Iron Valiant Entei maybe at number 11 or 12, I think it would have been. But yeah, the deck is completely just now a great deck in the format and is a top 3 deck right now. I think it's very much just going to be this high because of the hype post-LEIC. Whether the deck holds up is going to be the main question. Now, I didn't want to put it any higher than number 3. I don't think it's number 2 or number 1 right now, obviously. I don't think it's the best deck, but I do think that it is a very strong deck. And with the amount of hype the deck has going for it now post-LEIC and with how much more popular it's going to be, I definitely think that it is very much deserving of the number 3 spot. It's a very strong deck. It has a lot of really cool plays it can make. It's very reminiscent of how Rapid Strike plays, in all honesty, with how you want to kind of play around with your damage manipulation and how you want to set up your Yoga Loop plays. It can be a bit of a trickier deck to play. Actually, this could be a little bit harder to pilot compared to Rapid Strike. But it turns out the Entei build is the best way to play Iron Valiant, because we all saw the other Iron Valiant decks before LEIC. We saw it with Jolteon, we saw it with Urshifu. There's even a Palkia Valiant deck going around right now. But I think that Entei is just probably the best way to play right now. Entei has the most amount of potential, mainly because it's a little bit more cost efficient with the Basin, being able to build it up. It's tanky, it hits hard, you get access to Radiant Charizard, which is one of the main selling points as to why the Entei build is strong, is because you do get to play Basin Charizard, which is very, very good because Radiant Charizard is super powerful right now in our format. And yeah, we'll have to see where Iron Valiant goes. Its Guardy matchup seems good. I think its shakiest matchup might actually be the Maridon matchup. Maridon actually might be Valiant's trickier matchup right now, which is obviously a sign. It did lose to Maridon in the finals there, but I think that Valiant's still great, and I think that right now it's got a good footing in the format. We'll have to see where it goes and if it can hold up, or whether or not this deck becomes maybe a LEIC fluke. But for now, I think it's a good top 3 deck, so we'll have to see where it goes after this next regionals. All right, at number 2 is Gardevoir. Now, Gardevoir is a super powerful archetype going into LAIC, and I mean, we all called it. The deck did really well. There's a reason why it was the most played deck at LAIC. There's also a reason why there was multiple Gardevoirs in top 8 at LAIC. And honestly, if you really wanted to swap 1 and 2 with each other, if you wanted to swap Gardevoir with the number 1 spot, you honestly could. I think there's a case for both 1 and 2 to be swapped. I think both decks have an argument still to be BDIF. I think Gardevoir is still that strong of a deck, though there is a world where maybe it takes a bit of a beating to Iron Valiant Entei. And obviously, we saw the Maridon matchup be a little tricky too, as the Iron Hands can really cause a lot of chaos for the Guardy deck. But Guardy is still great in my opinion right now. I think it's still a very strong deck. And I wouldn't be surprised if we still saw Gardevoir do really good right now in our tournaments, because the Scream Tail is really strong. Obviously, Mirage Step might have to be not as good anymore, mainly due to how Iron Hands plays, right? Iron Hands really does appreciate Mirage Step, because if Iron Hands can knock out a Ralts early on and then you have to go Mirage Step, they take another 2 prizes. I mean, at that point, you just lose. So, like, the Guardy deck might have to kind of reformat itself with Iron Hands being so popular now with Maridon winning. But Guardy still seems great right now in our format. I think it is definitely a decent pick still in our format. There's still a lot of people that will pilot it no matter what. And I think it's still going to be a fairly popular deck. It's still very strong, and I think it still can keep up. The Iron Valiant matchup, again, could be a little shaky. And obviously, the Maridon Iron Hands matchup might not be great either. Or maybe it's also a little shaky, but Guardy is still extremely powerful and definitely is a deck that you should still respect no matter what. And at number 1 is Maridon. Calling Maridon the best deck in the format feels kind of weird, considering everybody always clowned on this deck, but it did just win LAIC, and honestly, post-LAIC, this deck is looking pretty ridiculous, mainly because it has proven that it can beat Gardevoir a little bit more easily now with the Iron Hands. You also have Path. Its matchup against Iron Valiant might actually be pretty solid too, thanks to not only Path, but also just Maridon itself being very good into the Entei. So I really do think that Iron Hands Maridon is just a great deck right now, and I think it's honestly deserving of maybe the BDIF. Again, like I said earlier, there's a world where if you wanted to swap 1 and 2 with each other, like you want to call Guardy the best deck, you could. I don't know, Guardy being the best deck right now doesn't seem right, though, in all honesty, just because of its matchup into Iron Hands and Iron Valiant maybe being a little shaky. But yeah, Maridon could actually be the BDIF right now. I think that it's actually a pretty well-deserving spot of best deck in the format. Taking down LAIC in both the Masters and Seniors division really does prove that the deck does have its legs right now. And I don't think it's no longer called Mid-Maridon. I think Iron Hands actually might have just put the deck over the top now. And yeah, Maridon is actually maybe the BDIF right now in our format. Post-LAIC it is anyways. Again, we'll have to see after this next regionals where Maridon ends up going and whether or not it places high again and whether or not it wins another regionals, because if Maridon can do good again, I mean, I think it definitely can hold its spot at the number 1. But yeah, Maridon being the BDIF right now. What do you think of that? And let me know in the comments below what you think of Maridon and whether or not you think it's BDIF. I think it's BDIF because its performance after LAC definitely proves the deck is most likely the best deck right now in our format, which is, again, crazy to say considering this deck always had its name be Mid-Maridon, but maybe it's not so mid anymore. But that'll be it for me on today's video here, looking at the 10 best decks post-LAIC. Let me know what you think of the top 10 ranking. Did I maybe get things inaccurate? Again, I think the trickiest spot was really just coming up with what the number 10 spot could be, but there's a lot of Rapid Strike and Teleon hype right now in our format. So Rapid Strike and Teleon might be on the come up right now. There's a lot of people talking about the deck. Again, it had a crazy showing at the recent late night, and it also did decent at LAIC, so I think Rapid Strike was probably the best de facto number 10 spot, but maybe there's another deck that could have been number 10. Again, Roaring Moon completely falling off the top 10 ranking. We'll have to see if Roaring Moon does well this next regionals, and that'll maybe put it back in the top 10 ranking, but yeah, Roaring Moon fell off pretty hard. Lugia's out of the top 10 too, another deck that is obviously missing from the top 10, and I think we'll have to see where the meta goes, and I'm hoping to maybe see some shifts in the format even more, because I definitely think our meta right now is in a spot where, yeah, we're probably going to keep seeing shifts every tournament. So yeah, I'm excited to see where it all goes. If you all enjoyed the video, leave a like. If you're new to the channel, subscribe down below. Help me on the road to reaching 10,000 subs here, and that'll be it for me. Hope you all enjoyed, and I'll see you all later. Bye-bye.